So they're going to try to suppress his speech. They're going to try to suppress his campaigning. And I think what they're really trying to do is suppress his ability to raise money from the top donors. But that might not really matter because, as you point out, Rob, he's raising money hand over fist from ordinary Americans who realize that the liberal establishment is not just after Donald Trump. Donald Trump has made this a point of his campaign. They're not primarily after him. They're after all of us, and he just happens to be in the way.
Boy, Michael, what a day it was. Thanks for being with us on Centerpoint.
No, the pleasure is all mine, Rob. And as you know, as a New Yorker in the state of New York, you can indict a ham sandwich. And so I think Donald Trump is the ham sandwich du jour. I guess the only silver lining I can see in this storm cloud is that the DA, Alvin Bragg, has finally found a felony that he wants to prosecute. The only problem is, in this case, it isn't a felony.
Yeah, this is a lot of people were very interested in what the indictments were going to be. And then we saw them, and then a lot of the thinking was it was underwhelming. But you have said that you think this is a way to essentially put an end to Donald Trump 2.0, that he wouldn't be able to run again. Is that right?
It is. I think that the Democrats will do anything they can to stop this man from running for president. I think his personality irks them a lot. But I think his policies irk them a lot, too. Donald Trump has offered policy alternatives, not just to what the Democrats have been offering for many decades, but even to what the Republicans have been offering for many decades. He was a genuine outsider in 2016. They began during his first campaign to illegally spy on him and to try to undermine that campaign, and they've never stopped. They've just continued using methods, many of which were illegal, to undermine him through the Russia hoax, then through the Ukraine hoax, then on and on and on, and then through the mythologizing about January 6th and the supposed insurrection, and now they're trying to get him on a 7-year-old trumped up misdemeanor that, as far as I'm concerned, really doesn't even qualify as a misdemeanor. The statute of limitations would have run out on that anyway years ago. It's just pathetic. And the people see through this. So the other silver lining here is that if you look at the poll numbers for Trump, ever since this indictment was announced, his numbers have skyrocketed. He now has a sizable lead in the Republican primary, and he raised $1 million in donations from brand new donors, in addition to $3 million from previous donors within just 24 hours. So I think it is backfiring on them. The question is, do they have the political power right now to suppress his campaign as they look to throw him into jail?
And his campaign announced they've raised $10 million since the indictment last week. McLaughlin poll came out today. He's up by 33 points over his second best challenger, which would be Ron DeSantis. So as this goes forward, do you think that this will, in the long run, help him or hurt him on his reelection chances or renomination by the party?
Well, it is helping him right now with the Republican base. And I don't think this is some kind of 5D chess from the Democrats, that they're prosecuting him so as to arouse his supporters, so as to make him the nominee. I don't think they think that strategically. I think they just hate his guts. Now, it might hurt him if they really can suppress his speech. There's no gag order in this indictment, but the judge has warned that he's not allowed to incite violence. And these days, anything a Republican says is misconstrued by the media as violence. So they're going to try to suppress his speech. They're going to try to suppress his campaigning. And I think what they're really trying to do is suppress his ability to raise money from the top donors. But that might not really matter because, as you point out, Rob, he's raising money hand over fist from ordinary Americans who realize that the liberal establishment is not just after Donald Trump. Donald Trump has made this a point of his campaign. They're not primarily after him. They're after all of us, and he just happens to be in the way.
Well, the next hearing is December 4th. There's going to be a long time for this to play out. He's been thrown off Twitter, and so have you. You were recently banned because you quoted a Bible verse. Tell us how that happened, and how did you get out of Twitter jail?
I tweeted out a very, very controversial verse. I tweeted out from St. Paul, brothers, do not avenge yourselves, for vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. So it's really two Bible verses because it's St. Paul quoting Deuteronomy. And for telling people not to avenge themselves, I was told that I violated Twitter's violent speech policy. This was in response to the Transgender Day of Vengeance, which was a nationwide campaign of transgender identifying people to seek not justice, but specifically vengeance. And so I said this is a bad idea. We've seen this throughout big tech. I was clearly scooped up in some kind of algorithmic problem here. And the way that I was able to get back onto Twitter is I ultimately deleted that tweet and then just tweeted out 4 or 5 other Bible verses when they allowed me back on. And I think that there was so much negative press surrounding my banning for that they did not ban me any further. But this is just something we've come to expect from a society that tells us that men are women, that babies are meaningless clumps of cells, that foreigners are American citizens, that up is down, that true is false, and that wicked is good. This is what we were told to anticipate in the Bible, and so it should come as no surprise, but we're seeing it played out from the principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness in high places that rule this world.
You don't need Twitter. You got Centerpoint and TBN. We're grateful for you coming on tonight. We want to have you back.
The pleasure's all mine. Thank you so much, Rob.
Okay. Our reporter, Nick Harper, is standing by outside Mar-a-Lago with the latest. Nick, what a day. What's it like there across from Mar-a-Lago? What are you hearing from his supporters and maybe some of his campaign officials about what he thought about what happened today and what he might say tonight?
Yeah, good evening, Rob. What a crazy day. I mean, here in Mar-a-Lago, just outside of Donald Trump's residence, you can see it across the water behind me. It's certainly been a quieter day to the chaotic scenes we saw outside of the courthouse in New York City. But we have seen supporters beginning to gather ahead of his speech tonight. And many of them feel like he feels, that this was an unwarranted attack by Democrat officials. We understand that he will be giving remarks a little later this evening, and we're hearing from his legal team that he is frustrated and upset by those charges, but also that he is motivated. And I think that's what he will likely be saying during the course of the evening in those remarks. That's the type of tone that we'll have: a determined Donald Trump, a defiant Donald Trump. The fact that he chose to speak the words "not guilty" himself in the courthouse rather than letting his legal representatives say those words for him, I think shows the defiance that will likely come out during this speech this evening.
Do you think his team or even the supporters there are concerned that he might lash out and make it more difficult for him?
Yeah, there's certainly that as a possibility. He was warned by the judge, Juan Merchant, about making inflammatory remarks. There's been plenty of those on social media, on Truth Social, over the course of the last few days, including attacks on the judge himself, being called by Donald Trump a Trump-hating judge. So we will hear unfiltered comments from the former president saying exactly what he thinks about all of this. It's just that slight worry, and I'm sure it is for his legal team as well, whether he strays into some dangerous territory, makes some inflammatory remarks, maybe even pushing some of his supporters to get out on the streets, as he has urged them to do in the past.
In the last 30 seconds or so, more legal indictments for other cases might drop soon. How will this affect his campaign this year and going into next year?
Yeah, they certainly might. Plenty of investigations in the background, including 2 federal investigations. Bear in mind that he's back in court for an in-person appearance for this case on December the 4th. And that comes almost 2 months to the day to the first primary calendar event for the Republican season, the Iowa caucus kicking off on February the 5th. So there is a possibility that this court case will cast a very long shadow over his campaign. The flip side is it may galvanize his supporters and his Republican base to get out there and vote for him as we head into the primary season.
Nick Harper on site, Mar-a-Lago, thank you for being with us tonight.
Thanks very much, Rob.